We have several top Tesla news to report today. So first, Elon Musk interviewed Donald Trump last night. In that conversation, Elon explained in more detail his views on the oil and gas industry as well as climate change. He repeated his desire to help lead an effort to make government more efficient. Second, Tesla sales in China continue to boom. Last week's sales hit 15.5 thousand vehicles, which is enough to get within just 5,000 behind last year's point. Third, the Cybertruck has now outsold Rivian R1T by 2.6 to 1 in the second quarter. Fourth, full self-driving 12.5.1.3 is now rolling out wide to customer vehicles. And finally, construction has begun in Queensland, Australia on a new $750 million Tesla Megapack battery storage facility. Got Hans Nelson joining us. Hans has his own YouTube channel called Hans C. Nelson. Follow him on X as well. Thanks to you so much, Hans.
Thanks for having me, Herbert.
So one of the big stories, of course, last night, Elon interviewed Donald Trump. He did it on X Spaces. So the first hour was kind of, they were having difficulties getting the space up. I guess millions of people were trying to log in. But Elon also said that there was this DDoS attack. Obviously, a lot of people, international and domestic, trying to make this thing not happen. He finally did get it going. And so just before I play some clips, what was your reaction to that?
Well, it was definitely kind of a long and rambling interview. And really, Elon said it wasn't an interview. It was designed to be a conversation, which is, I think, why it was a little bit more rambling, that Elon didn't step in and try and wrangle the conversation very much. He just let Trump talk for almost the first hour and some change of the actual conversation part. It was like 95% Trump, and then Elon just asking questions basically, or providing little brief summaries. But that said, I think it was obviously a very highly viewed and important conversation. That's probably, Elon said, I think it has reached now over 1 billion people in total across all different forms of distribution. And that is an incredibly large number of people. So the demand for hearing what these two people have to talk about is huge. So I think it's going to be a combination of Trump reaching a new audience in Elon's following, and then vice versa, Elon reaching a new audience of Trump's following. There's obviously a lot of commonality, if you listen to the whole thing, between Elon and Trump on some specific policy issues where I think they find a lot of agreement. And while, Trump is one of the things that I, stepped away from the conversation with was that Trump likes to ramble, and he's listening to him is more like listening to someone who's a comedian or an entertainer. Like, he's trying to follow a thread from wherever the conversation is now and move over to a point where he can basically, deliver a punchline and get some laughs from the audience. And he is funny at times, but also it is kind of hard to follow his logic. And so as someone who's trying to understand his positions clearly, that is a little bit frustrating. But at the end of the day, I think a lot of the policy positions that he holds, while his rhetoric is pretty tough to handle, is actually, on policy issues, he's pretty solid. And so that was just my overall reaction to the conversation. Yeah.
Okay. Well, for this show, let's focus on what Elon said about his position, because he was able to clarify his position on energy and sustainable energy, coal, on oil and gas, and others. One of the big quotes he had was, I don't think we should vilify the oil and gas industry and the people that have worked very hard in those industries to provide the necessary energy to support the economy. At the same time, we do want to move to a sustainable energy economy, because eventually you do run out of oil and gas. It's not infinite. And the other thing he said was, it's something we need to move towards. People can still have a stake and drive cars. I don't think we should vilify people for it. We should generally lean in the direction of sustainability. Solar is going to be the majority of Earth's energy generation in the future. So you get the solar power, you combine that with batteries, use that to charge electric cars, and you have a long-term sustainable solution. That's what Tesla's trying to move forward. But when you look at our cars, we don't believe that caring about the environment should mean that you have to suffer. So we make our cars beautiful, that they drive well, that they're fast, they're sexy. Model S, Model 3, Model X, and Model Y spells out sexy. It's probably the most expensive joke ever. I'm a big fan of Let's Have an Inspiring Future. I'm going to go ahead and play just a little clip of what he said last night.
Any money and we wouldn't be having inflation right now, which is killing our country.
Yeah, absolutely. And I should probably say something about my views on climate change and oil and gas, because I think it probably different from what most people would assume, because my views are actually pretty, I think, moderate in this regard, which is that I don't think we should vilify the oil and gas industry and the people that have worked very hard in those industries to provide the necessary energy to support the economy. And if we were to stop using oil and gas right now, we would all be starving and the economy would collapse. So I don't think it's right to vilify the oil and gas industry. And the world has a certain demand for oil and gas, and it's probably better if the United States provides that than some other countries. Sure. And it would help with prosperity in the U.S. And at the same time, obviously, my view is we do over time want to move to a sustainable energy economy, because eventually you run out of oil and gas. It's not infinite, and there is some risk. I think the risk is not as high as a lot of people say it is with respect to global warming. But I think if you just keep increasing the parts per million in the atmosphere enough, eventually it actually simply gets uncomfortable to breathe. People don't realize this. If you go past 1,000 parts per million of CO2, you start getting headaches and nausea. And so we're now in the sort of 400 range. We're adding, I think, about roughly 2 parts per million per year. Still gives us, so what it means is we still have quite a bit of time, but so we don't need to rush, and we don't need to stop farmers from farming or prevent people from having steaks or basic stuff like that.
All right. So I just wanted to show that part, which is Elon clarifying his position about oil and gas industry, his position about sustainable energy. What do you think about what he said?
Yeah, I mean, anyone who has listened to long form Elon conversations or, him speaking going back years, this has exactly been his position that he has stated publicly for a long time. So it's great now that I think through this conversation, a large audience of people who have never heard him voice this specific view are going to hear it. But this has always been Elon's stance on these. And I think it's very reasonable and, it makes a lot of sense. And one of the things that he didn't really say in this conversation was that Elon's solution to transitioning us from where we are today to that sustainable energy economy in the future is purely through market forces. That if we make not only cars that are compelling and they work well and they're beautiful and they're fast and they're fun to drive and they're powered by artificial intelligence and they can do a lot of these things, on top of that they're also going to be significantly cheaper. And so over time people are just going to move to what is the form of transport that costs them the least, so that they can have more of their hard-earned dollars to spend on other things that they care more about. And by attaching what he's doing to battery electric technology, that is what is going to happen over time, because batteries continue to get cheaper and cheaper every year. They will continue to do so for many decades to come. And they're already basically on par with, if not cheaper than, their ICE powered, internal combustion engine counterparts. And that's just where we're at today. If you play that forward a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades, they're going to be far, far cheaper. And so, just self-interested consumers are going to pick the cheaper option because, they want to spend their money on other things. And so this is something that's kind of going to be an inevitable outcome anyways. And we don't need heavy-handed legislation to try and force people to make these decisions, especially through either guilt or shame that you're a bad person if you choose these other means of transport. And so I think that is something that people should just step back from and realize, hey, no one is telling you that you can't have a gas powered car, or no one's telling you that you can't eat a steak. Or at least no one, Elon's not saying that, and Trump is not saying that. And I think that really helps to tone down this hysterical rhetoric that people have felt like they're being shouted at and yelled at and forced to do things that they don't want to do and don't feel like are in their best interests. And what Elon is saying is that actually we don't want to force you to do anything, but we do want to provide you with the best options. And, over time, we trust that people will make the decisions that serve their own interests instead of, serving the interests of other people at their own expense.
I mean, even 10 years ago, I remember Elon saying way back then, 2012, he was saying that we're here to make the best cars in the world. This is not about, buy this car because it's sustainable energy. Buy this car because it's going to be the fastest, the least to service. It's going to be the most beautiful looking. You want it to compete by itself, not because it's just electric. That was his position way back then. So this nuanced answer about oil and gas is something he's been saying for years. It's just something that people never really understood.
Well, really I think that it is something that is important for people who work in the oil and gas industry to hear, because Elon's right. Like, our modern economy and the standard of living that we have today is not possible without oil and gas. And so anyone who wants to sit on their iPhone in their nice house, having been driven around, in these big fancy cars all over the place, and then say that oil and gas is the enemy, they're terrible, they're evil, they're destroying the planet, like, it's just a hypocritical thing to say, because everything that they enjoy and would not do without in their own life only exists because we have access to this incredible source of energy that has provided us with so much more power than we had access to before. And so, yeah, modern life doesn't exist without that. Developed life doesn't exist without that. And when we villainize these people, it is really counterproductive. And I think it is morally reprehensible, in my view, to tell people who are such an important piece of the economy that they are evil, because they're not. They're absolutely not. They do what they do because if they didn't, modern life would come to an end, and they understand that, and they have worked very hard, to provide us all with very valuable goods and services. And over time, will that specific technology survive competition with other things that are superior forms of energy to use in the long term, just from an economic standpoint? No, but that doesn't mean that these people are evil. And a lot of the infrastructure that we have used to get to where we are today actually may be, able to be reused and repurposed in the future, for other things as well. And so, yeah,
okay,
I'll get off my soapbox on that one.
Yep. No, that's good. I mean, it's a fine line, honestly. But let's talk about the next thing here is we got new information about what's going on in China. We reported on this last week. It's looking like China's starting to boom again. It's catching up. So it used to be quite down at the beginning of this year. Here's Tesla Chan. He always keeps a good close eye on what's going on. He took a video of Tesla China's delivery center. Very, very busy yesterday. Just a quick view here. This is over the weekend. It was, that's crazy. The number of people there is massive. It's fun. Everything. Just so big. Here's Tesla. Today is Valentine's Day in China. In celebration of this, the Hangzhou Tesla Delivery Center has received many family and couples. And you can see here the photos. That's a lot of people. That's great. And look at that. There's another shot of what's going on there. So the report of what happened last week of 5 to 11th of August. So that's just really just ended 2 days ago. Tesla China reported 15.5 thousand vehicle sales for that week. That's a very strong report. And this brings total 2024 China sales now to 350,000 vehicles. That's only 5,000 behind what was happening in 2023. So the gap for the gap to reduce further next week needs only 13.9 thousand weeks. And then if you look at the trailing 12-week sales rate, you're 3,000 vehicles ahead of the same period last year. So you can see that the momentum is increasing. And this is it from AJ. And what he's saying is that Tesla's strong China sales are likely driven by increased purchase incentives, right? There's lots of incentives, local sales campaigns, including attractive financing deals, overall meaningfully larger EV adoption versus last year. So he shared this chart. And you can see the red is this year, 2024, and the blue was last year, 2023. And we're now here on week 32. What do you think?
It's good to see this for a couple of reasons. Obviously, we want to be getting back to at least close to sales from last year, and hopefully by the end of the year we can pass that in China. But then if you step back and you look, okay, what is the significance of that? Well, this year is definitely a more difficult year for sales when you consider all of the macro headwinds that we have going on. And a lot of
Right.
people have been saying that, the economy in China is absolutely a disaster, and things are going to melt down. And so this is a data point that shows us that no, the economy in China is actually not doing bad, and that's a positive thing. And I think people need to remember that Tesla, with its direct to consumer sales model, is a data point that leads other auto manufacturers' data. And so to see strong sales in China is good. The counterpoint to that we do need to also take into account is that Tesla has been continuing to unwind their delivery wave in China. And so, if we're evening out deliveries in China instead of having everything in the beginning of the quarter shipped overseas and then everything at the end of the quarter delivered domestically, that it may seem like we're doing better earlier in the quarter than we're going to over the long run, if we don't have that giant push in the back half of the quarter. So that is something also to keep a little bit of an eye on. But I would say just overall, it is encouraging to see Shanghai trending in this direction. And, we still haven't gotten to the Model Y Juniper refresh. We still haven't gotten to any of the cheaper models. I would expect that when Tesla releases, the whatever the next generation vehicle that's not manufactured in the fully unboxed process that Elon has talked about that's going to be manufactured on existing manufacturing lines. I think that at least one, if not multiple of those variations are going to be sold out of Shanghai. And while there's going to be a little bit of a challenge in that switch over to whatever that new product is, if it comes in at a significantly lower price point and puts more pressure in this growing EV market in China for these lower priced cars where, BYD kind of doesn't have a ton of competition from anyone who's got a product that is superior to them at these prices that are really below where the Model 3 is being sold at, then there's still a lot more market for Tesla to compete in and potentially to win, I think, as someone who really has the highest quality technology in that space. So yeah, we're on a good track.
Yeah, I'm very happy to hear this because this is the year where we're in between the two growth waves. China's economy had slowed down a little bit, so it's concerning that we could have lost everything, but it didn't happen. So we're staying strong, and like you say, what's coming up is the more affordable models, the refresh of Juniper, and so for Tesla to still do very well in China at this point is very critical. We just reported last week that over 50% of all new cars sold now in China is a new electric vehicle, which includes hybrids. So it's growing really fast. In fact, the growth in China is what's showing the 17 million of new sales of electric vehicles this year. So it's making it, it's primarily the main draw of growth. And so we need to do well. And then hopefully this year or next year, by next year, you'll have these new models. And so that'll continue growth and in fact be more. When do you think that they're going to sell the Cybertruck in China? Not for a long time.
Yeah.
Because that's the reason I say that is that's the latest, newest vehicle that Tesla did. If it's not going to show up in China for several years, then it's not going to help.
It is a good question. I just don't know enough about what their regulations are around the size of the vehicle and if it could be sold as is or if it would have to have major overhaul on the design. I think if it is something that can be sold as is in China, that there may actually be a push to export Cybertrucks from the United States to China and sell them at the, as the foundation, basically to offer Chinese buyers an opportunity to purchase Foundation Series Cybertrucks before they roll into the lower trims sometime the end of this year, beginning of next year. If not, then I think it would probably be several years before it's available in China.
I've heard that they might have to not call it a truck or something like that. There's ways to maybe go around that. Who knows? Okay, so let's report on the Cybertruck. This is the latest information here was AJ again was reporting that Tesla Cybertruck outsold the Rivian R1T by 2.6 to 1 in the second quarter. This is according to Kelley Blue Book estimates. Here's the table, Kelley Blue Book as of August 12th. You can see in red here is Tesla Cybertruck, and you can see the blue is Rivian R1T. Tell me more what you're looking at here.
Yeah, I mean, according to these estimates, we've sold well over 10,000 Cybertrucks in total in the United States. If you take the 2,800 and the 8,700 there and put them together. So yeah, really, I mean, I guess over 11. And that is really on track. The peak of sales of the R1T was in second quarter of 2023, where they sold over 10,000 units in a single quarter. According to this data, we haven't sold over 10,000 in a single quarter, but I think there is some questions around that. But obviously, we're at the very beginning of deliveries of the Cybertruck. There's so much demand for this vehicle. And if Tesla just continues to ramp up production, I think this is the beginning of a trend where Cybertruck just massively outsells the R1T on the back of superior engineering, superior branding, and just really product superiority overall, especially as they bring down the cost. You know, I don't think that they're going to just sell an infinite amount of these Cybertrucks at this $100,000 foundation series price. But over time, as they bring these prices down to the $70,000 or $60,000 mark, which is a price point that Rivian's really going to have a hard time offering their vehicle at, that we're going to be talking about, you know, multiples, probably verging on 5, 6, 7, 8, potentially even 10 times as many Cybertrucks being sold per quarter than R1Ts, which I love the Rivian R1T. It's a beautiful truck. I think it's a great product in a lot of ways. But they do struggle to produce them in volume profitably. And I think that is just a very hard headwind to overcome over time.
Yeah, they're selling it at $70,000, and this is the foundation model of Cybertruck, over $100,000. They just started selling the Cybertruck. Here, you can see that in just 2 quarters, it's already surpassed quite quickly. So you're saying, though, that this is not possibly those numbers for Cybertruck is underreported. Here's Bradford Ferguson saying that these numbers are false. Tesla sold at least 17,000 Cybertrucks through the end of June. And the way he knows that is by looking at these, I guess, the VIN numbers.
That's a VIN number. Yep. So if you can zoom in, the end of that VIN number is the number 17,524.
Yep.
And that is essentially a serial number. Now, sometimes there are vehicles that don't get produced, so that's not an exact total production number that you can extract from that, but it is roughly in the ballpark. So I mean, you could really be looking at anywhere from 15 to 17,000 total vehicles that have been delivered to customers based on a VIN number like that. And this owner here says that in July they purchased which would have been after the end of Q2, but they purchased a Cybertruck, and the VIN that they received was in the 21,000 range. And so it's highly likely that by the end of June we had delivered well over 15,000 total, which would have put production and deliveries in Q2 of Cybertrucks above that 10,000, probably somewhere around 12, 13,000 at least in a single quarter, which would have surpassed the record for even the R1T deliveries.
What's your estimate for 2024 at this point? Has that changed?
I'm hoping that we can get to somewhere between 80,000 and 100,000 vehicles delivered.
You're still at the 80,000, 100,000, eh? Yeah.
Yeah, I think, this is ramping up meaningfully. They're not going to deliver that many at the foundation price. They'll have to, have some other options. But if they can continue on the progress that they've made in the speed of the ramp, I think we've got a shot at it.
Wow. Okay. That's still quite high. Surprised because I thought that they're selling the foundation, staying at the high point here. They'll need to switch that at some point. Didn't sound like that they were going to do that.
I mean, if they want to be on a run rate of 250,000 cars
right?
early in 2025, they've got a long way to go.
They do. Okay, so let's go. Full self-driving. This happened last week, but it looks like that yesterday it's rolling out even more. Full self-driving 12.5.1.3 is now rolling out to customer vehicles, not just the early access people. We're only seeing vehicles with hardware 4 receiving this update, but I think yesterday they started saying that they're starting to see it in hardware 3 as well, but we haven't any confirmation on that right now. So it says here, yeah, this is the one. The third and largest wave of full self-driving has gone out last 10 minutes, whereas the previous waves only included Model Y. This update is now expanding to Model S, X, and 3 vehicles. So I'm curious to see somebody with a 3 coming out and saying that they've received it.
Well, that is the Model 3, but it's still hardware 4. I did some digging in the comments, and people are still saying this is only hardware 4, even though it's Model 3s, it's Model 3s with hardware 4. And that tweet was from yesterday, that third wave of 12.5.1.3. And so it is good to see this continuing to expand. That means that the quality testing is going well. And as long as it continues to expand to larger and larger waves of hardware 4 owners, to the point that everyone in North America who has hardware 4, who has purchased the system, actually has access to this 12.5 branch, then I think that bodes really well for when they do get this running on 12 point or hardware 3, that it'll probably go out really, really fast to anyone and everyone who has hardware 3.
And then this is more information about Tesla's Megapack energy business. Construction has begun in Queensland, Australia on a new $750 million Tesla Megapack battery storage facility. Man, I love how big these numbers are. That's a big number, $750 million. The 300 megawatt, 1,200 megawatt hour Stanwell battery marks the start of the transformation of the major coal center into a green energy hub. Here's a photo of what it looks like here, 1,200 megawatt hour mega batteries. That's great. Look how many that they have. This is just one area. So they've begun construction there, one of the largest battery projects in the state, and is set to use 324 of Tesla's 2XL Megapack units. That's a lot. And then project gained a $448 million investment from the government, Queensland government, and it's the largest of its kind, create 80 jobs. When batteries like these are publicly owned, it means Queenslanders themselves benefit, not overseas shareholders. And then they come into addition of, this is in addition to other Stanwell company projects, including big batteries in Tarong and Callide. Once they show that it's working, ROI in one place, they're just going to keep growing it. So this is what it looks like. There's a planned 5 gigawatt hour investment from Stanwell to convert these fossil fuel generation efforts into a hub for renewables. So there you go. So it's massive.
Yeah, and I mean, just for people to realize, we were talking about 300 megawatts, I believe, and now we're talking about 5 gigawatts. So that's, a meaningful increase in total. And that it is just showing, Queensland is one of the places where we have seen some of these big battery projects roll out. I think a number of times the largest overall installation has been in Queensland somewhere. And so this seems to be something that for Australia's grid specifically, the economics of this are working and working well. And, another thing to call out from the article there was that they said we want to see continued downward pressure on energy prices, and these big battery projects are part of how we do that. And so this is making, not only are these installations paying for themselves, that's why they're continuing to invest in installations of the size, but they're paying for themselves while the price of energy is coming down for customers in Australia. And so it's great to see you getting more energy, for the return on investment to make sense for the project, and for, at the end of the day, the customers to enjoy lower energy prices because of that, which is the whole reason that Megapack is a product. And as they continue to ramp up production of these and bring down the cost of them, that economic story will be one that plays out in more jurisdictions besides just some of the most expensive jurisdictions in the world.
Thank you so much, Hans. Thank you. Appreciate your insights. Love it. You're always very good about this. Follow Hans on his YouTube channel, Hans C. Nelson. Talk to you soon. Bye, everybody. I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.